Welcome back to Sleeping Around the Podcast. Oh my gosh, we are in Portland, Oregon. It's true.
I'm tremendously excited because we have a couple today who really are going to give us such incredible guidance on what the journey has been like for someone who I really think demonstrates how you break through the glass ceiling of a diagnosis of narcolepsy. The reality is that we have continued to see the perpetuation of the stigma of narcolepsy as individuals who are unable to be successful with or without a diagnosis. And many times we lean in on the barrier of the delay in diagnosis as a reason as to why they're unable to be successful. And what I truly appreciate about the couple who is here today is that Josh Andrews is an accomplished NFL player. He was able to make those accomplishments without a diagnosis. And I am even further excited about the fact of having his wife Amber here
Absolutely.
because we recognize that it is the village who help us in all of our journeys. And it really was his wife who was pivotal in being able to say, like, there's something wrong here.
Absolutely.
We need to do something about this. And so without further ado, I'm really excited to have both of you here, Josh and Amber, for really being able to share what the journey has looked like. We're going to do this in a two-part. We're going to talk about pre-NFL, early Josh life, because I think it's important for people to hear about before a diagnosis and what that journey looked like. And that despite not having the formal diagnosis of narcolepsy, what you were able to accomplish. Because I really am, I, I have to say, and it may even sound ignorant of me to say, but I'm so proud to hear about the accomplishments you've had, because I really think you serve as such a tremendous role model
Absolutely.
for other people who are either on the diagnostic journey or who have already been diagnosed. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Yes, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for having us. It's
So I want to start this off with the question to you guys. How did, number one, I'm geeking out. We're talking about, we're going to talk sports and sleep and disease state and support systems. How did this happen? I mean, this is an creation. How did, because I'm honored to have you on our podcast, but how did the introduction happen?
Yeah. So what's funny is that I've been a distant admirer because I work very closely with Julie Flygar
yeah.
and Project Sleep. And so
Yep.
if you don't know Project Sleep, you have to make sure you check it out. They've just rolled out a new sleep hotline for
Mhm.
anyone who's having any type of sleep issues.
Yep.
But I think it was about a year or two ago that Julie took the opportunity to be able to highlight your journey.
Yep.
And that was really, I think, quite tremendous. There has been some opportunity for me to work with different people within the industry where they were like, you guys need to get together because you're going to jive. Like, we've been
Yep.
seeing what you guys been doing on the podcast, and we want to make sure that Josh is getting his story out.
Yes.
And so really was quite fortuitous to be able to have the opportunity to have people who just want to connect, right? And that really, I think, is an important piece because you and I, we share that of like, how do we connect good people? And so it was very fortunate that someone who's in both of our worlds was able to provide that introduction.
No, absolutely. Julie is a great friend of ours, a great mentor of mine. And I mean, just she's the first person I met that had narcolepsy also in person. So
Oh,
like
wow.
Oh, wow.
for me, that was a big stepping stone for me, really a big moment just to actually pick her brain on what it's like to have narcolepsy, read her book
Sure.
and just see what experience she has and just compare experiences and just see like she's been a great help
Yeah.
for me having narcolepsy, and so
Yeah.
with my diagnosis and everything, so that's been very
Yes.
helpful.
And so if you're not familiar with Julie's book, make sure you go on Amazon, find it. It's Wide Awake and Dreaming. It's her memoir in regards to pre and post diagnosis. I have to tell you that that book really has been quite tremendous, even within the medical field. Many of the companies, but also many physicians who are in this space utilize it to better understand, because she gives such a vivid description of what the daily struggle was like and how it evolved and the toll it took on her. And I think she is another person who demonstrates that you can be successful in this in spite of narcolepsy, really trying to steal away your time, your energy, and all of your efforts. So I think what you've also highlighted is a very common theme that we hear is that people who have narcolepsy don't necessarily know other people with narcolepsy. Julie had just done some great work actually surveying individuals with narcolepsy and idiopathic hypersomnia. She just presented this at World Sleep last year, of that the majority of individuals didn't know anyone else who had this condition at time of diagnosis, and still more than a third at the time of survey, which is through an advocacy organization, still didn't know someone else with that diagnosis, which again highlights how this condition can be very isolating and
Well,
marginalizing.
I'm curious, when were you diagnosed with narcolepsy?
2017, I was 27 years old at that point. I had just broken my hand. Then the season I was the year we won the Super Bowl. And I was on the practice squad. And at that time I was practicing, and then that was pretty much it at that point, because I broke my hand. So like I was
You're on
still
IR.
healing from that. And I was like at the point where I'm like, okay, I feel like we should get some more sleep tests done and stuff like that. Go ahead.
Yes, this is what I
That's
love.
not
No, this is
exactly
perfect.
how it happened, but
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
okay.
That's-
That's okay.
okay, a year or two so sleep has always obviously been a thing in our relationship, and we can backpedal to that. But we had an agreement because he also snores really loud.
Yeah.
And so, and
Yeah.
growing up, his mom always thought maybe he had sleep apnea.
Yeah, my mom has been a respiratory therapist for the last 30 years, and she's always thought I had sleep apnea. You know,
But
and
never
so yeah.
was like successfully diagnosed, did a couple of sleep studies, never got like proper results.
Yeah, well, like in high school, no, this is my freshman year in college. I had come home because we didn't go to a bowl game that year, and my mom was like, I think you need to get a sleep study done. She's always wanting me to get one. I was like, all right, I'm back home. I have nothing really else to do at that point.
Sure.
So let's get a sleep study done. And I did the sleep study, and then things fell through the cracks. Like I went back to school, and like the doctor was like, oh, let's do a follow-up. And I didn't really have the time to do that just
Sure.
because I was back at school, back doing that.
That's like a big part of the whole diagnosis was like always moving around,
Yes.
always getting interrupted, never with the same doctor.
Yes.
Still like to this day almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I was gonna say is
Okay.
we had an agreement that we were gonna have his tonsils removed because of the snoring, and we were thinking sleep interruptions. We were thinking not getting proper restful sleep.
Sure.
And so we did do that in like 2015 or 16
15.
before the diagnosis.
Yeah. Have my
And-
tonsils taken out.
Yeah,
and
it
then
was like, getting your tonsils taken out as an adult is like not fun.
it was not
Yeah.
It
fun
was
at all.
sad.
Is
But
it ever fun? Hold on. I don't know if it's ever fun.
it's
Uh,
just,
Yeah,
They're
a
like,
little more
ice
resilient.
cream.
Yeah, a little more
I can have
resilient.
ice cream for a month. All right, time me up.
I'm so sorry, but go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
you're
it's
good.
never fun.
So we did that, and
Yeah,
then
it did.
after recovering, we're like, it's the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're not seeing any improvement. And so our agreement was that if that didn't work, we would take further steps. And so that's when we were like, we need to do like a proper day and night sleep
Mhm.
test,
Yeah.
which you did in Philly.
Yeah.
And that's like when
Yeah.
you guys. So it was kind of, there were some preemptive things that got us to that point.
So there's a whole lot that I want to unpack.
Oh,
in
me
just
too.
a minute,
Oh, my
right?
gosh,
So
this
there's a
is-
whole lot because I think that this is fascinating that mom's a respiratory therapist,
Mhm.
concerned for
Totally.
snoring. Bring me back,
There
like
you
bring
go.
me back to childhood, because I really want to understand what this kind of looked like. Because right now, when you look at the United States, right? So I was just on NBC this past week, and that was to talk about the most recent Gallup poll that more than 50% of adults are not getting the right number of hours of sleep, right? So if you were just to date back 10 years ago, CDC said, you know what, the United States is in a major public health crisis. 1 in 5 adults aren't getting the right sleep. There's sleep disorders galore. It's an epidemic. And then you fast forward a few more years, it's 1 in 3. Now we're seeing it's more than 1 in 2. The challenge is that this has become so normalized that we see 58 to 73% of middle school and high school students are getting insufficient sleep. So everyone's tired, everyone has sleep problems. And it's interesting because the story you're describing where mom is in medicine and going, oh, well, it's probably sleep apnea. I hear this so commonly from some of my own patients where their parents are doctors, nurses, et cetera. And they're like, well, I just thought they weren't getting enough sleep. I just thought that it was sleep apnea. I just thought it was. And so no one thinks narcolepsy because it's technically a rare disease. And so bring me back to childhood. What is your kind of earliest thoughts around, like, what was little Josh like?
Yeah. So yeah.
Wait,
it's-
have you ever been little? Let's just clarify. Young Josh. By the way, young. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, but yeah, I grew up in Southern California, Inland Empire, the IE for people who know that
Okay.
area. Yeah, and sports has been a huge part of my life growing up. My brothers played sports, basketball, not mainly basketball. I feel like we're mainly basketball players growing up, and then really I didn't really play football till high school. I was
Oh,
always.
interesting.
It's funny because like some people call me Juice. Like that's my nicknames. Like even if you met somebody random, oh yeah, Juice. Like that's what people know me as. So, like, and that's I got that nickname just from being like one of the chubbier kids, like playing AAU basketball, and that's what they just call me. You know what I mean? So
Interesting.
yeah.
Let me ask you a question about
Yeah.
that, and I have a very specific reason that's why I'm asking you. Was there a period where you weren't chubby? Meaning that, do you remember along this journey that there was any significant weight gain in your early childhood? That you were kind of a more lean version of yourself, and then there was increased weight gain? And the reason I'm asking this question is because in pediatric onset narcolepsy, weight gain is almost a signature. And so rapid weight gain, or there was a publication that was put out in 2022 that demonstrated that rapid weight gain in children who have narcolepsy are actually more severe phenotypes. So more severe presentation of excessive daytime sleepiness and cataplexy of narcolepsy. And as a physician, it's not uncommon that if I have someone who comes in and I'm suspicious of this, I can look at their growth chart and go, you started at 10 years old, you started at here. And they're like, how did you know that? It's like I'm a magician. And I'm like, my crystal ball is working today. Yeah. So the reason I'm asking that question is because we recognize weight is a real challenge for people who have narcolepsy, and it's a biologic part of the condition.
Yes.
And so that's why I want to lean into that and really understand it, because there may be other people who their children are struggling with weight. 50% of children and adolescents right now are overweight to obese. And so understanding, like, if this is a brand new sudden thing, or it's like unraveling.
Have you all? Yeah. So
It
like
is.
compared to your brothers, were you lean and then all of a sudden you were like me? I grew up chubby, right?
Yeah.
And I came from a gene of chubby people. Was that it, or were you just the bigger kid out of all your age
I
group?
was thinking about it now, like 12 years old was like probably the earliest I remember that, and at that point I was pretty chubby. You know what I mean? I feel like that's when the earliest recollection of me. Now thinking back, now that I know what narcolepsy is, me having these symptoms going on. So like 12 years old is when I first feel like, I still remember this to this day. It was an AAU basketball game. We were traveling to Arizona, first time on the airplane. You know what I mean? We're going to Arizona. It was a big deal.
Sure.
And like, I'm on the airplane, passed out, and everyone's like, bro, wake up. Like, what are you, like, it was middle of the day. Like, it just was not normal at that time. And I didn't think anything of it. And I'm tired, you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to take a nap on the plane. You know what I mean? And I feel like it's just incidents like that, just thinking back, like, yeah, that's definitely not normal now, you know?
Yes.
And then even like driving in my mom's car, like going from school or home, instantly bowed out cold in the car in the passenger seat. My mom's just like, all right. And then as soon as we get there, I'll pop up and I'll pop up. All right, I'm ready to go and out the door. So
let's do it. He wakes up, let's do it. Like jumps right out there, like, ready to go.
That is so funny.
So around 12, yeah.
What?
Around 12 years old.
Yes.
Yeah, so like around 12. And then thinking about it, like that's when I was probably my chubbiest, you know what I mean? Even in high school, I was
You were a little leaner in high school.
A little leaner in high school for
Before
sure.
college,
yeah.
but
Now, were you a snorer then too? Meaning, from what your mom saw probably when you would pass out in the car, your friend saw on that first plane trip, was there snoring also involved?
Oh yeah, for sure.
So again, here's something that Anna's taught me. A lot of people will look at that and go, oh, well, it's got to be obstructive sleep apnea. He's snoring. But it's masked within now what we know is narcolepsy. So during that time, I'm curious about the energy level. So you wake up and you could still play four quarters. You were still, even though you were chubby.
Exactly.
I mean, keep up and, you know, because
like that's like, honestly, like that's probably what has like saved me or like has kept me going. Just like I feel like the stimulation from my mind being engaged and active and stuff like that, just having that active lifestyle has helped me out so much, even to this day. Like having that active lifestyle, I feel like that's going to be a part of me till the day I die. I have to, as she knows, I have to get my morning started with a workout. If I don't, like she notices instantly.
Huge.
It's this like day and night. So how much different it is.
And no pun intended there at all.
Literally.
Now, the reality is that when you're talking about working out, this really truly does have a pharmacologic impact, which makes sense. There's actually an Instagram influencer by the name of Bell Hut. She herself also has narcolepsy, and she does not treat it with medication. She treats it with exercise, and that's her whole thing, is that she's using exercise.
Amazing.
And so again, I'm not advocating that people shouldn't use medications and that they should only use exercise, but it's to each their own, and we have to individualize care. But the reality is that what you're experiencing makes all the sense in the world. For a person without narcolepsy, I would say don't exercise towards the end of the day. Why? Because a lot of your alerting neurotransmitters or brain signalers are going to become more pronounced. And so if you're utilizing it to fuel your day, that only makes sense, that you're going to be much more productive and more of the version of you that you like best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So during so 12th grade, that's like that 6th, 7th grade, that already is a horrible time in life, right? I've learned that with working with middle schools and high schools, is that middle school is probably the worst time. I think I've blocked that out of my head from my own middle school experience, or it's just gotten a lot worse.
I'm giggling because we had a conversation off camera.
Prior.
Yes.
Because y'all have 3 children that are very young, and I said I still want to be y'all's friend in about 10 years when they get teenage years. But,
Yes.
but go ahead. I'm
Yes.
sorry.
And so, do you have any recollection of what that was like in middle school? Of did this make it harder for you to socialize? Was it something that was just a part of who you were? Like you were saying, my nickname was Juice. Was it Sleepy Juice? Like not again, not to be stigmatizing.
Is that what
but
Michael
to
Jackson
understand.
gave? Okay, that's too soon. Is that too soon? No, Jesus Juice. Sorry, that's different.
No, it's so ironic with the name Juice, because you think of juice, you think of energy, and
Yes.
like at times I feel like when I play sports, yes, that's was what I was known for, just like giving energy and giving effort and trying to outlast somebody, just giving that juice. But like when I'm off the court or off the field, like just thinking back to middle school and stuff, I didn't really know anything until probably till high school. You know what I mean? Where it'll be periods where I'm just passed out in class. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I was going to ask, during school hours, you were crashed out.
Yeah, or in the car, like just times like that. It's just like, man, like, okay, that's not right, and
And when you think back to those periods, so one of the things, again, recognizing a lot of people are sleepy. So if you were just look at the adult population, 20% of the U.S. adult population has excessive daytime sleepiness. However, some of the distinct features within narcolepsy are the other REM dissociative features that can be seen. So sleep paralysis, sleep-related hallucinations, nightmare disorder, some of the things, and obviously cataplexy. So some of the things that sometimes stand out to me when I'm seeing people and I'm hearing their story is they're describing the same type of thing, because there's a lot of teenagers who are sleeping in their classes, and they don't all have narcolepsy. However, some of them do. And so we typically are only hitting them with like, you need to sleep more at night. And so I wonder, when you were having these short naps, whether it was in the car or in the classroom, and you were waking up very refreshed, which also is kind of a signature within narcolepsy, do you remember having either vivid dreams, or do you remember like waking up and answering questions that no one asked you?
Yeah.
Because there's sleep-related hallucinations where people are responding to something that actually wasn't there.
Yes. No, I feel like in the car is when I had the most, or I would have trouble waking up sometimes at points where feel like I'm like reaching out to wake up, but like my body's not moving.
Oh,
You know what I mean? Or I'm like trying to like escape, but I'm like, I can't move right now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Just that paralyzing
Yeah.
feeling.
Yes.
I feel like that's like one of the distinct things. I'm like, okay, just thinking back now, I'm like, yeah, like that's like crazy to think about. Like I can't wake up or I can't move when I'm
Yes.
sleeping. It's a scary feeling,
Yes.
So
Yes.
I would say the vivid dreams. You
Yeah.
for sure have vivid dreams like right off the bat, because
Yeah.
he enters REM sleep almost instantly.
Yes.
And like you'll fall asleep for just a couple of minutes and be like, oh, I just had the craziest dream,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
right away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think to me as a viewer, as
Viewer.
Yeah. Amber, let me ask you a question about that. Because this is one of the things that I always, in a clinical practice, like when I'm teaching my medical students, residents, and fellows,
yeah.
I always will ask the family, so they slept for 5 minutes. How long was the description of the dream?
Oh,
And the description of
yeah.
the dream generally is like 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Like they're like, how did you have the possibility of dreaming all of that within the period that you were sleeping?
Oh, yeah.
What would you say?
I would say it's long. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, you don't always tell me what they are. You always say, I just had the craziest dream. I'm like, how? It's been 3 minutes, you know? I'm still awake or doing whatever, but
No,
yeah.
the craziest thing, I did my sleep study and we did like the multi-latency test the next day. And like, those are 15-minute like sleep cycles. At one point, I thought I would sleep for like 45 minutes to an hour. I'm like, I looked at my phone. I'm like, I was only sleep for 15 minutes. I thought it was an hour had passed by.
Yeah.
You know, it's this crazy time like that where I think a whole long period of time has gone by and you look at your clock, you're like, okay, that was only 10 minutes. You're like, okay.
And it can go in either direction because some people also say, I didn't sleep at all. And meanwhile, we saw that they were in a long period of sleep and they didn't feel it because they have such a sleep-wake state instability that it sometimes becomes hard to piece apart when I'm awake and when I'm asleep. And sometimes even are mistaking sleep periods as true wake periods. And like, asking about the time that you went to the beach and did X, Y, and Z. And you're like, we didn't do that. Who did you do that with?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. No, that's
innocent. I promise you.
You remember that time? No, I don't. I'm just a viewer.
Just a viewer.
So I'm interested in, and we will jump back in because I want to hear more about that story. So diagnosed in 2017.
Yeah.
You met your first narcolepsy person who we just spoke of in what year? Same year or was
person
that?
with narcolepsy?
Probably.
When did we meet Julie? Probably like a couple.
But I remember he specifically was looking for community. And that's how you found Julie.
Yeah. Because like as you my calls, my cleats, the first one, I did it for 2 years. The first time I did it.
Hold on, I want to highlight, make sure everybody heard this. So, My Cause, My Cleats is something that the NFL does that I'm a big fan that Roger actually brought this in, Goodell. So they always got fined for wearing certain cleats, and we might know some more famous people that would get in trouble for wearing different color cleats. I guess the famous would be going back to Johnny Unitas, to Peyton Manning trying to wear a set of high tops, right? Well, somebody got smart about this and said, you know what, we're going to allow them to wear cleats, but it's going to have their cause on there for a good thing. And you had Project Sleep, dude. And so you did it 2 years in a row, right?
Yeah, well, I did it 3 years. The first year I did, what did I do? I did another sleep. I can't remember the name of the first sleep foundation I did. But like, I didn't really talk to them or anything like that. I
just did it.
Exactly. I just threw it on the cleats. Not thinking anything of it, you know what I mean? But then the next year, I found Project Sleep and I found Julie. And I was like, okay. And I really had interaction with Julie. She has narcolepsy, just seen her whole story.
Now, I think was that 2020?
That was 2019.
Because I thought your Project Sleep
the
shoes.
First,
yeah,
Project I think Sleep. It was 2020. So that was COVID year.
Yeah.
So it had to have been 2020. Yeah. So that was the first year when, with the Jets. That was the first year where.
So meeting Julie, and I'm assuming you said trying to find a community, you were online. This is me doing online, by the way. Not really
playing
typing.
the piano.
Not even really typing there. I have no idea what that means. Whatever. But trying to find a community was probably through social media or through online.
Through social media, you know what I mean? And this was very isolating at that time because I knew like I had big diagnosis and I was like, okay, like do I want to tell people this? Like, did I have narcolepsy? You know what I mean? Like, so I really kept it. I didn't really keep it under wraps, but I kind of did keep it under wraps because like I was like, like if I tell my coaches, like, sheesh, like,
right.
I feel like Jeff Stalin, he was the coach of the Philadelphia Eagles. He was very understanding. You know what I mean? He was very great coach, great mentor, father figure almost. You know what I mean? And he was very understanding and knew that I had some type of problem. But now that he was like diagnosed with narcolepsy, like, okay, I get it. You know what I mean? And be able to work around it. But like that, go ahead.
Well, and that's the thing too. It's like, I almost wanted people like that to know, because it's like you're in meetings a huge part of your day in professional football or professional sports. I'm sorry, anything.
Film, man.
So much film, so many meetings in like a classroom situation. And I'm like, I know him and I know that he's dozing off. He does like chews gum, has sunflower seeds, has ways to keep himself like alert. But it's like, obviously these coaches are picking up on something and you don't want them to think that you are not taking care of yourself, that you're lazy, that you're not paying attention, that you're not invested. So,
you had a rough night out.
I want them to know like, this is the reason that you have these behaviors. You know?
And I think that's a very important point, because if we're going to reflect back on kind of the childhood journey and being in school, many times in a school setting, teachers and in employers, once you become an adult, mistake sleepiness as boredom or lack of investment, and boredom or lack of investment don't make you fall asleep. Sleepiness make you fall asleep, right? And so that is a really important distinction. And so I think that that is such an important thing of identifying that as a call to action for individuals who have sleepiness, that if you're falling asleep inappropriately in a sedentary setting, the call to action is have that investigated. It's not due to boredom. It's not due to lack of investment. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're not trying hard enough. It's because you likely have a sleep-wake disorder that is making you more likely to be prone to sleep inappropriately. And there's treatments for all the 70 different types of sleep disorders that exist.
70.
So,
That's wild.
yes.
I didn't know that. That's
Yeah,
70.
yes. And so I have a question for you. So we've talked about middle school, we talked about high school and recognizing falling asleep on the plane. There then is the transition to college, right? Before we got into the NFL. And were you in college? Were you playing football? High
Oregon
school
State
and
Beavers.
college, right? Okay.
So
So tell us about like what that looks like. How is classes? How is socializing? How is all of that?
So let me run back to high school for one last thing.
Yeah.
So like
No, we could stay there as
yeah,
long.
no,
Yeah.
my senior year, I had the Nissan Maxima, probably like 2005 at that time. It was after football season, and I'm driving to go get my haircut after school, and I just crashed into the back of this lady. Boom! I passed out in the back, and my car was totaled. You know what I mean? The lady,
Wow.
luckily, she didn't get hurt or anything like that, but everything was good. I think we settled with the
And
insurance.
you didn't get hurt.
No, nobody got hurt. So that was like a big whoa, wake up call for sure. But and then when I
So what happened there? So you're
Yeah.
describing that I think I fell asleep and
Yeah.
I got into an accident.
Yeah.
So what was the steps that were taken to be like, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like, did someone say like, I don't know that you should drive anymore? You need some sort of workup? Like, what happened
no,
there?
I ended up going to college. Like this was probably like
I think
yeah, exactly.
everyone just thought he was a tired student athlete.
Yes.
Like that was
The big stigma
that
for
was
sure.
the fallback every time something would
Yeah.
happen.
Exactly.
Even
Because he
going
was
into
a
college.
successful athlete. And so if he's performing well in
Sure.
this sphere, this is just a consequence
He's
of that.
just
That's
tired.
acceptable because we prioritize you being a successful athlete,
For sure.
right?
For sure. So at
Interesting.
that point, I thought the same thing with myself. You know what I mean? Okay, I think I was just tired. It was after school. You know what I mean? Sometimes I usually take
Sure.
a nap after school. And I was
Sure.
starting to go get my haircut on that day.
Sure.
So like, for me, that happened. I was like, man, like I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
You know, and
Did you start avoid driving?
no. Well, here's the thing. Like after that, I graduated, and then I went straight to college, and I didn't drive a car till my senior year of college.
Oh,
I didn't need to.
interesting.
You know what I mean? I rode a
Interesting.
bike. Corvallis is such a small town,
Yes.
Oregon State.
Like shuttles and
It's like shuttles and literally shuttles and bikes my
Sure.
whole entire 3 years, my first 3 years. And then I got a green car, and then I only drove it to go to the store or like,
Sure.
you know,
Sure.
or get some food. I only drove it probably like once or twice a week, maybe
Were you
less than that.
were you falling asleep on a shuttle?
Yeah, like, yes, for sure. And then like, I'm like thinking back all the buses, like I had to ride the city bus in high school because we lived pretty far from high school. And like, there would be times where I missed my stop because I would be like 3 miles past where I need to go because I fell asleep on the bus.
You
And
said
I'm like-
something interesting earlier, though. So after your freshman, you went back home,
Yeah.
and we talked about this a little earlier. So this is in that college period where your mom goes, "Hey, man, you got obstructive sleep apnea."
Exactly.
Like she diagnosed you, you know, probably because you're snoring and then falling asleep. I'm assuming
Yeah.
you were still having the sleep, you know, falling asleep at different points. I believe you said you did get tested,
Yeah.
but there was no follow-up. So that's where I wanted to go back to, because you had to get back to school. You had to do this. You have to do, you know. And so from that sleep test, I'm assuming you did in lab,
Yeah.
PSG to everybody. Okay. You did just one night.
Yeah.
Did you ever get the results, or did you just go to school the next?
No, I
go
don't.
back?
I think I talked to the doctor, and like they said I didn't have sleep apnea.
Well, yeah.
Or so like, and then I was like, okay, oh, perfect. All right, that was the end of it.
See,
You know what
Mom,
I mean?
I told you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I was like, all right, I don't need to follow up again. You know what I
Okay.
mean?
Yeah.
I'm went about my day, or you know what I mean? And
Sure.
And it's true because, and we're talking, and I want Ann to please address this. So at PSG, whenever we're looking at this, yes, we could look at your, you know, different numbers to see if you have OSA, but there's so many different other readings that if you're not qualified, and this isn't a knock on people who do the readings, you won't see that. You won't see that there's other things to look at. If we're just looking to see, hey, where does he lie in this? Oh, he's good. He's young.
Yeah.
He's healthy. He needs to get back to school and do other things other than a follow-up.
Yeah, and I think the important part that you bring up there is that the value of what can we get from it in
Yes.
polysomnography
Yep.
versus many times we're using home sleep testing that is going to miss some of these other pieces.
Yep.
Not to say that home sleep testing is bad.
Right.
It just is that they were developed for those who have a very high positive predictive value for severe OSA.
Right.
Meaning that if I were to put that in just plain language, right?
Yep.
That the likelihood is almost 100% you have OSA, and so therefore this is a close enough approximation to
Right.
say that, right?
Right.
So when we're doing an in-lab polysomnography, some of the value proposition there is that we have an EEG. And so we already know, so Emmanuel Mignot's group out of Stanford has published on this a few years ago now, I think it was in 2019, where they actually did machine learning on the EEG component and of a sleep study and had demonstrated that because people who have narcolepsy type 1 have such significant sleep state instability, that it was actually superior to a multiple sleep latency test in being able to identify someone who has narcolepsy type 1. Now, we now have seen some features of the overnight polysomnography also being incorporated to changes into the International Classification of Sleep Disorders, edition 3, the text revision, where with narcolepsy type 1, if we have an overnight sleep test and we see a sleep onset REM period on that overnight sleep test, meaning that you go into REM sleep in 15 minutes or less, which clearly he does, that in association with clinical features of cataplexy is sufficient to diagnose narcolepsy type 1. I don't even need an MSLT because of the fact that the specificity, meaning that if I see a SOREM, a sleep onset REM period on a polysomnography, you're narcolepsy. Like you have narcolepsy. And so that I think is some of those features that are really helpful, that when I have a person who is getting a sleep study because they're very sleepy, I look at what is their sleep state stability. I look at what is their periodic limb movements, because people who have narcolepsy have much higher likelihood of having a higher periodic limb movement. I look at what is their sleep efficiency. Do they have a lot of arousals? Do they have very fragmented sleep? People with narcolepsy may have lower sleep efficiencies. If there's no obstructive sleep apnea or no other defined reason, one of the things I'll make sure I include in my report is the severity of sleepiness is added proportion to anything that this sleep study is showing. Recommend actigraphy, recommend sleep diaries, recommends seeing sleep psychology, making sure that we're not missing a circadian rhythm disorder or insufficient sleep, but then saying, and if you do all of those things and you don't identify a cause, do a polysomnography with an MSLT, right? And so it is, I do believe this is on the onus of the sleep physician who's interpreting these studies to actually give a report that gives directionality, because we are otherwise failing people like Josh every single day.
And again,
By delaying the diagnosis, they're getting a test and then we're missing it. And the other part that's important is just because even if you were identified to have sleep apnea, people who have narcolepsy are anywhere from 3 to 18 times more likely to also have sleep apnea. And so if you have one sleep disorder, the likelihood is you probably have 2 to 3 others. Even if you look at narcolepsy, part of narcolepsy is having other sleep disorders. And so I do think that this is such an unfortunate thing, and that we do see, I mean, even you do work with different colleges, especially the football teams, to look for sleep apnea because the body type makes you prone to sleep apnea.
I mean, I can
And then
look
we
at any
stop-
lineman and go, yes.
Yeah.
But then we
Yeah.
stop looking for anything
Yep.
more, and that's really unfortunate.
Well, my question, and gosh, you do such an amazing job explaining that. That's why she's here.
That's the only reason I'm here.
Well, that and why was there not a follow-up? Meaning, let's just say they did notice some stuff like that. What I know about you and what I know about many sleep doctors that I work with around the country, they'll do a nap the next day.
Yeah.
They'll keep you there. They'll go, hold on a second. If he doesn't have obstructive sleep apnea, something's up. But let's do a nap. Let's do another sleep. Let's
The
keep them 2
challenge
nights.
is they can't do that unless they had the insurance. So these are where there's
Again, but
those
don't get me
logistics,
started
right?
on the
The
insurance.
if you don't have an insurance approval, they're not going to let you do that. So if I had a story that came in where Josh was telling me, yeah, I take all these naps, I'm really
Right.
sleepy, I'm having this weird dreaming, all of this, I would order by default an overnight with an MSLT, and now the insurance approves
Well, true.
it. But
Did they
most
even
people
ask you
do.
that? Or did you just go? Mom made the appointment. I showed
I
up.
was 17 at that point.
That's what-
so like,
Oh, the first one.
or I was 18 at that point. So
You probably just
Yeah.
showed up.
Yeah.
Probably, yeah, I just
Got
showed
all
up.
hooked up and went,
Yeah.
oh, I'm really going to sleep well now. I mean, I got all this on me. But what happened is probably you went, I'll never, probably slept. That just frustrates me for you. And probably for you too, Amber. So, I guess we could do that all day long, say should have, would have, could have, hindsight's whatever. But looking back there, you just went back to school
Yeah. So went back to school.
in your green car. Like I called it that. Oh, no, not yet. No, I was senior. Sorry.
I had a beach cruiser.
There you go.
Got
Very
stolen.
good,
Like,
very
sad,
good. Oh,
sad.
no.
Nothing better than seeing a guard riding a beach cruiser.
Yeah.
Very hot. Yeah, I can tell why. You're like, who's that? Oof.
You're like
I
that.
ride that over on side meeting.
First day we met, like I rode over to her house sweaty.
Right off his beach.
So, on the beach cruiser.
You're like,
That's my guy.
this is my future husband.
And it was happily ever after.
Yeah.
So that's a good story.
Yeah.
Is that what we're going with? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Your coach is in college.
Yeah.
So, and I don't want to go to the NFL, but I'm just going to say, obviously you had a special relationship. From an outsider looking in, Philadelphia brought you back 3 times.
Yeah.
There is, and you said father figure.
Yeah.
Let's go to the Beavers for people that's Oregon State. Did you have that type of
Glad you
relationship?
made that clarification.
Did you have that type of relationship with those coaches?
Yeah,
Okay. Because I'm sure you fell asleep in class. Remember, I played college baseball, so I'm going to say, did they give me a little bit of a pass on some things? Yes, they did. I'm going to just shoot you straight. I was a scholarship athlete,
Yeah.
so there was some leniency there.
We've compared notes.
Oh yeah,
Like,
I'm
wait
sure.
a second, I didn't get that grade in that class.
Yeah.
How did
Yeah.
you
So-
do that?
Yeah.
but meaning the athletic portion of it and the support as far as just falling asleep all the time or sleepiness or any
Yeah,
issue?
like Coach Cav, as my college offensive line coach, and I was playing well. You know what I mean? I feel like that was probably the biggest thing that's
But you've always done that,
Exactly.
Juice. Like you were always able
Exactly.
to play and
Exactly.
brought that perfect point up.
Yeah.
You even said, I'm up. Okay, let's go.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
do it.
So as long as you were playing well, cool.
And then like the thing that helped me was just how to answer questions or ask questions in meetings. You know what I mean? So that way I'm like making sure I'm engaged and trying to do that as much as
Mhm.
possible. You know what I mean? I feel like that's something that when I do get tired of, I try and ask a question or I try to stand up and try and like, okay, I just go to the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back and try to like,
A refresher.
like a refresher, you know what I mean? Something just to like get me moving or keep me going. So,
Sure.
um,
And I think those are important things for people who are listening to your story to hear, because that's a very, very common compensatory mechanism people develop, is that they go, I go to the bathroom, I take a quick nap, I throw water on my face. I even have people who pinch themselves.
Sunflower seeds, gum.
sunflower
Um,
seeds, gum.
And so there are
Nicotine.
these pieces. I mean, we even see that when people are driving, for instance, going back to the motor vehicle accident that you had, people think like, I move closer to the wheel, I turn up the music, I sing along. Studies have demonstrated subjectively, I feel more alert, I feel more awake, but objectively, it doesn't actually change things in terms of reaction time, et cetera. And it's a challenging mix because many times people will describe that I do all these things to compensate, but then later on people will tell me like, I was saying weird things in that meeting, or like I asked a question and then my follow-up didn't make any sense. Did you find that you had any of those kinds of disconnects? Or that people just
Oh,
didn't
you
call
got
out
to bring
on
it to Amber on this one.
Yeah.
Because again, coaches, not a knock on, but coaches will be like, hey, he's playing well. But y'all were dating.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'm sure he did do some of that.
For sure. To this day, I feel like there will be times where I'm sorry, Amber, while we're having conversation, I'm like
His
starting
eyes
to
start
like,
closing,
yeah, and
I
I'm
go,
like,
I'm done with the conversation.
like,
Your eyes are starting to close. Like, no, they're open. I'm
Yeah.
like, honey, I
or
can see you.
it's just like not for me personally. It's unconscious. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Or like
Sure,
Like she said.
it's happening, but I don't know it's happening. You
Sure.
know? So
sure.
for me, I'm still trying to carry on the conversation,
trying.
or you
Yeah.
know, so.
Yeah.
And it gets frustrating for her, as
Yeah.
she can imagine.
Yeah.
But, and then like if I'm like talking to other people, like I keep it short. You know what I mean? Like especially if I feel like that happening, like I'm done talking. Like
Sure.
I'll just be like, okay, Like I'll reserve the state of myself, especially if I felt that happening, because I'm
Yeah.
like,
Do people misinterpret that as like, man, he's a jerk?
Or he's shy.
Like,
or
why?
he's shy.
Yeah, well, it depends, because like if all of a sudden in the beginning of the meeting he's talking to you like this, at a time gets to me, he's like, I'm like, what did I do? He doesn't
Right.
like me? Like,
Right.
do you ever get anything like that?
nah, not really, or like,
Like you do a good job with that.
I feel like I do a good job with that. Like I know I have to read the room, or
Got it.
I know when okay, it's okay for me to do that. The coach is talking, like, okay,
Sure.
I'm just gonna be quiet.
But think
like,
about it. You've taught yourself from
Exactly.
a very young age, which we're just going to say 12, because that's what we talked about in the podcast, up until and now we're at 19 years old. You've literally taught yourself that when I'm on, I'm on.
Yeah.
Okay, is it safe to be off? Okay, I'm off.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's this probably subconsciously you're doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Obviously, you pursued. So there's and you probably have friendships and relationships. So it's not like you were isolated.
Yeah.
I agree with what you just said, and I didn't think about it till you almost role played it to me.
Mhm.
I could see that. At first, you're really engaged. You probably felt this, Aaron. Really engaged, and then just kind of.
Yeah. Like, does he still like me?
Yeah. Wait a second. Is he drinking? I mean,
Yeah, I can't remember like specific times that you've done that. Obviously, like on the early stages of us meeting, it was more the falling asleep. Like I was thinking back, like preparing for this little bit, like thinking about college, and like I'm pretty sure that you fell asleep like on me on one of our first hangouts, and I was just like, he's just tired. Like that was the thing. It's just
yeah.
he's just
Yeah.
exhausted.
And
He's a
remember,
college
this
athlete.
is totally in love lust.
Yeah.
You're totally
Yeah.
just
Oh.
enamored. Like, oh, look, he's so cute. He's
Yes.
so-
Yes.
Sleepy bear.
Usually when we would hang out, it would be either after football practice or
Yeah.
just
Sure.
having
End of the day.
exactly the end of the day. So
Yeah.
like that,
It's just a reality.
yeah.
So I think one of the things that's very interesting about, again, I just love your story so much, because you really, it's such a relatable story to so many people. And again, I can't highlight enough about how, despite not having a diagnosis, you continue to succeed. You succeeded in love, you succeeded in life, you succeeded in school, sports. I mean, it's a really important thing for people to hear.
Heck yeah.
But when I'm hearing your story, I'm going, well, let me tell you about this study that actually is exactly what he's telling us. Where, again, the European study that had just come out, I think it was in last year, in 2023, that had demonstrated that the average time, so we always talk about the delay in diagnosis, but the average time for someone to actually seek out care is 3 years from symptom onset, because they're going, it's not a problem for the
Right.
reasons that you're describing. I'm an athlete, of course I'm tired.
Right.
I'm in high school, of course I'm tired. I'm doing this, of course I'm tired. And other people going, yeah, that makes sense, because it's easy to make sense of it because everyone's tired, and you're like, I'm exerting and this is my compensation for that. And then the separate piece is, I've learned these other skill sets, and we see this in children, irrespective of the disability they're handed, right? So if you had a child who was born with cerebral palsy and they had a hemiparesis or weakness, right? Versus if you or I tomorrow had a stroke and had that same deficit, their ability to compensate and minimize that deficit is
Right.
very different from you or I. And again, there's differences in neuroplasticity and what the brain can do, but they start to adopt that as a part of, this is
Yeah.
my life. I'm not going to let this hold me back. I want to go run track. I'm going to do that. I don't care that I have hemiparesis. And so the same thing is true here, is that the skill set that's been developed. Now, the part that it will be very interesting later on is hearing how these different compensatory things also reflect in the Epworth Sleepiness Scale, right?
Right,
Right?
yep.
So many times people will complete the Epworth Sleepiness Scale. It's a validated scale. You've probably completed it. It's like, what is your likelihood to doze if you're sitting and reading a book, watching TV, et cetera? The many times people who will, I'll get it, and they come to see me for a motor vehicle accident because they fell asleep in the wheel, and the Epworth is 0, meaning like
Yep.
no sleepiness whatsoever.
Right.
I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. And they're like, well, that's because I stand up when I'm watching TV, or that's because I'll pinch myself, or I'll chew gum, and so
Or they're not honest on the.
yeah, but many times it's because they've put these other
Right.
kind of guardrails on that response. So
I mean,
Go ahead.
I think it's so. The example you gave is like when you were a big baby, when you got your tonsils taken out as an adult. I'm kidding.
It was so sad.
I will tell you this though, and we'll get in this to that second part. When you get drafted or when you play for an NFL team, you go through a battery of tests. I mean, blood work, bone work, X-rays, scans of the body, scans. Am I correct?
Correct.
And you're probably thinking, man, okay, I'm just a tired guy.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'm just a tired. I have played for these
Yes.
awesome teams, Super Bowl. I have done all this, and they would have caught something by
Yes.
now.
Yeah.
I am the best of the best doctors that see me at each one of these amazing cities and amazing teams
Yeah.
that have these physicians that are probably revered,
Yeah.
right? And none of them probably told you, said, it's this because your blood work comes back, everything's good,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I want to dive into that when we do second part because I'm curious the mentality it had because you're home and you see him going, there is something going on.
Mhm.
You're you going, there is something. But this outside world, and especially the competitive world that you're in, is like, oh man, you're good.
Mhm.
You know, rub some dirt on it type mentality.
Yeah. 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 So I think one of the things that I would want to close with for our audience for this first part of the segment, because I really want to kind of just be able to move on and talk about like what it was like to be in the NFL and get a diagnosis, and then how is that impacting not only performance, but then your
Mhm.
relationship as a couple and with kids. But I really think that the summary statement that I would want parents to hear, as well as any children or adolescents to hear
Mhm.
who are either watching this or listening to this, is if there is sleepiness or other unusual symptoms like recurrent bad dreams or your child telling you that there is things in a room. Now, again, everyone says like the boogeyman, et cetera. These are very, very vivid descriptions that they generally are having and horrifying and many times can be associated with sleep paralysis. Those are all calls to action to have further evaluation. The second part is even without a diagnosis. So if you're a part of a family where your child or the adolescent has a diagnosis, recognizing that that is not the glass ceiling, that you now are looking at what are the limitations that my child can succeed in, or if you yourself as a child or adolescent have this diagnosis, that please don't put limitations on yourself as to what you can succeed in. You are hearing such a salient story of, despite not having a diagnosis, but being burdened with the symptoms of narcolepsy, success is still within reach. And so the reality is that when we have the right support, whether it's from our own family, our friends, or a broader community, we are able to succeed. And it is really within the reach of all individuals, even if the diagnosis is made or you're still on that diagnostic journey. And so I really thank you guys so much for being able to kind of set us up into understanding what it was like to kind of go through all of this, the success you continue to achieve despite all of the burdens that you were experiencing. And then I can't wait to dig into what it's like in the NFL.
Yeah, and advocacy
Yeah.
and being a father
Yes.
and being married. I mean, it's just awesome. So Josh Amber, thank you so much. You know, I know that we're going to do a part 2, but I'm honored to have you guys here. And I just want to say something before we cut out. I'm real big on body language. I don't know if you noticed this, but I really appreciate the way you guys look at each other when you talk, the touching. There's just something there, and that's awesome.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much.
Aw.
And we'll get back to part 2, but thank you for sleeping around with Dr. Ann and Matthew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Did this episode leave you wanting more? Then make sure you subscribe and check out this episode right here.